It's easy to look around and notice everything wrong in your city. In this podcast by Every Neighborhood Partnership, join Grace and Andrew as they invite friends, activists, pastors, leaders, and city workers to discover what's good in the neighborhood. Join us for insightful conversations that will encourage you to see your city and its people in a new way. Welcome back. You are listening to What's Good in the Neighborhood. Today, Andrew and I get the opportunity to sit down with Erin Obwald. Erin is the executive director of Safe to School, and we're in our series talking about Beyond the Bell. So beyond the actual school campus, what happens and what creates a real community school. Erin, as the executive director of Safe to School, is in charge of safety and crosswalk and making sure kids get to school safely from the neighborhood. And so she just has a really unique perspective. She's at over 50 schools across Fresno Unified. And so we just kind of pick her brain on her experience, the signs of hope she's seen across campuses, and then signs of need as well. What does it take for a school, regardless of where it's located, to be a safe place for a kid to get to? And so we had that conversation with her. Stick with us.
All right, well, welcome to What's Good in the Neighborhood. How are we doing, Grace?
I'm so happy to be here.
And my name is Andrew, and we are glad to be diving into a new series. So as we kind of thought about our work and things we've highlighted and conversations we've had, we realized we really haven't talked about schools.
No, we do a lot with those.
Yes, like a lot of the What's Good in the Neighborhood is really revolved around issues in our neighborhood, which, you know, is connected for EMP. We launched Connecting Churches to Serve Schools. And so we wanted to bring on some friends, some partners, folks that we work with, and even just step back a little bit and examine, you know, the series is titled Beyond the Bell. It's conversations that are, you know, revolving around the issues that are affecting our schools. Our schools, we've always seen them as a hub of the neighborhood and as a spearhead on the issues that we see in our city. So excited for the series. And this is our first interview in the series. I don't know if it'll be our first episode, but we needed to start with the best. So started with a longtime friend and now community partner of EMP, Erin Obwald. Welcome, Erin.
Hello. Thank you guys so much. I'm so excited. So excited to be first.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was thinking this morning, Andrew and I have actually done a lot of firsts together.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that's kind of funny.
Like what?
Living Undivided.
Yeah.
And the Mississippi trip with the well.
Oh, yeah.
Popped to my mind this morning.
Oh, that's awesome.
Give a little context. We've known each other since 2000.
Since 2003.
Yeah.
Because that's my oldest son was born,
Yeah.
so that sticks out. My husband got a job at Fresno Pacific as a residence director, and Andrew, it was your second year.
Yeah.
And he was
year when I
a
met
sophomore student at Fresno Pacific.
That's crazy.
I almost got fired my sophomore year. Dave saved my job. So I'm indebted and grateful to.
Yeah. And they've been good friends ever since.
So I'll give you a little context. Erin now runs an organization called Safe to School. And she's from Fresno, has kids that have been in the region and area. Has 5 kids, which I have 4, and everybody thinks that's a lot. So 5's definitely a lot more. And we actually went to the same university, graduated from Baki Graduate University, which helped us think both of us, think that global urban perspective of what is God doing in our communities. And then is really taking this ministry program that's worked with the district, Fresno Unified, for many years, and taking it to a whole nother level and lens. So I'm excited just to learn kind of, Erin, your journey into the role. Like, this is not something as a graphic designer kind of by trade. This is not necessarily, ED of a nonprofit isn't the path probably you always imagined, but
not what I had planned. It's an understatement.
You're a learner. You've really seen a lot, and you're just so proactive for our kids and our families. So I'm excited to kind of hear your perspective. So could you maybe just start us off? Like, how in the world are you now the executive director of Safe to School? What do you do? How do you find yourself in this role?
Yeah, so like Andrew said, my husband and I both grew up in Fresno. I grew up in Fresno Unified, graduated from Hoover, go Pates. Yeah. And my dad was on the school board, actually, when I was in middle school and high school and even a little bit into college. And so I was PTA president, all these things, right? All growing up. It was not uncommon to see my dad at my school and So I actually grew up knowing a lot of the administrators and like how it all worked. Went to a lot of PTA meetings myself. But was involved with him doing a lot of service. Both my parents were deep in nonprofits in Fresno, which I loved actually, and it was something that I did with them individually. And so in 2017, my dad had some vision loss and just needed some help driving around to the schools. For that particular year, all my kids were going to be in school for about 2 years because I had homeschooled for a long time. I'm like, oh, I can help. I can drive you around. Like we're super close. Like we love, seeing people around town. So I kind of joined him in that just on a total side, like,
I'm being a good daughter.
Hanging out a couple days a week to, as he was getting older and I was seeing, kind of some things that could be improved upon. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of an improver, not really maintainer as much. It's like, well, what about this? And why is this? And what are we going to do about that? And, I really began to own it. And I feel like the gifts that God's given me actually are well suited for this role. And it just grew into what it is now. So
what did Safe to School start out as? Like, what is it? And then where kind of are you at right now?
Yeah. So the volunteer crossing guard program that my dad started 2010, actually Safe to School as its own nonprofit, was kind of birthed out of a little bit of a crisis because the crossing guard program's always been volunteers in Fresno for about 40 years or so since I was little. And he was a part of it and kind of helped, make sure it kept going. But different organizations managed it. And so the organization that was managing at the time, I don't know all the reasons, but maybe it just didn't fit their kind of where they were headed. And so it's going to kind of disappear. And so my dad was like, well, let's just make Safe to School as its very own nonprofit so that this keeps going. And so, 2010, he started Safe to School when he was like in his mid to late 60s. So, yeah.
You went over it quickly, but all crossing guards in Fresno Unified are volunteer.
Are volunteers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when your dad was running it in the beginning, has it always been parents? Is it parents today? What does that typically look like?
Yeah, it's mostly parents. If you're familiar with the term NTA, noontime assistant, it's a part-time role in Fresno Unified, and a lot of NTAs are doing the crossings, especially
paid or volunteer.
It's so every school kind of runs how they want to run, and so sometimes it's part of their kind of what they ask them to do, whatever. But also since COVID especially, a lot of parents weren't allowed back on campus yet, or people had moved or, weren't sure of what their involvement wanted to be. So we actually trained even more NTAs at that time. And to me, the beauty of an NTA is, for one, they're part-time. So they can be a part of our program, and then they can use their 3.5 hours doing other things on campus that are helpful. Yeah. And they already know the students. So they have that relationship. A lot of times they've been around a long time, or maybe they're college students. Mm-hmm. So I really feel like the NTAs are just a total blessing to what we do, but it's mostly community members and parents.
Yeah.
Even we have a lot of parents or, just older community members who've just been doing it so long, like 10, 20, 30 years.
Wow.
It's very cool. Yeah.
That's the picture I have in my head is
totally.
The older neighbor that just loves to be the crossing guard.
Or they sit in their front window in the morning and see like near tragedy and have to be part of it. And so that is, even out of seeing that need, people stepping up and just, for the kids in their neighborhood is really, really important.
It's really cool.
So thinking about like just the lens then that Safe to School sees, like what kind of issues have because at one basic, you're just helping coordinate volunteers. But, knowing and having a lot of conversations with you, you've begun to see like issues in the city and the way that we, this is how we all learn this stuff, right? You start to see, why are there gaps in infrastructure? Why are these things, why is there no crosswalk? Why is the crosswalk black and not yellow, right? Like, what have you begun to see? What stood out to you about how our kids get to school, how safe it is,
Yeah, one of the things kind of that you mentioned that I saw was just a huge gap of like, whose job is it to get that crosswalk repainted? Mm-hmm. If I'm an aware person and this is my job and I'm rolling up to a school to make a visit and I can't tell where the crosswalk is, like I'm looking for it and I'm going the right speed limit. If the regular public can't even tell where the crosswalk is. How are these families and these students, especially a lot of little kids, walk by themselves or with their siblings? How are they going to stay safe when the infrastructure that's part of the city and maintaining, that level of safety around the school is not happening? And whose job is that? So I just went on a hunt and figured out, okay, actually the principals, it's kind of an expectation at that time with the city that they would be turning in crosswalk repainting orders. And I thought, no, that's no good.
Just add
that
another
doesn't make
thing
any
on
sense.
their
They
bucket.
have a lot going on inside
Right.
the school. And so if our role is training the crossing guards, which again, when I took over, it was like, train the crossing guards. That's the extent of the whole organization.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're going to do that. And we're going to look at all the things outside the school fences, right around the school, that would prohibit families and students from getting to school safely. So I just started turning in those crosswalk repainting orders on the Fresno app, in case anybody needs to know about that. And part of it is just information. Like, a lot of people don't know. That's an app. That's the way our city government has put out there for community members, for anyone, to make them aware of stuff. Because, we have a big city. We have a big footprint. So
In a
for
big
one
school district.
department,
Yes.
to go be monitoring every crosswalk and every pothole and every, right? Like, that's, again, part of the community. And I think that app is so helpful because it's
back
the
and forth.
community engaging in, like, oh, there's a need over here I wanted to make you aware of. Can you put that on your list to do, right? Which they're so wonderful. They are working so hard at the city. Again, it's a big place. And to make road and infrastructure changes, you can't do that when it's raining. That's not the time we're going to be painting, right? So as I continue to learn about that process, I was then sharing it with the schools, with the community members. It's like, okay, well, they're not going to paint between November and March. So we're going to keep turning in those crosswalk repainting orders or the red curb painting, where those needs are. And then they're going to start getting those done. So in the first year that I started turning those in was probably 2021, actually right after COVID. I think I turned in like 38 crosswalks that needed repainting. And the gal that was there, she was not so happy with me. I'm like, well, that's what it's for. That's what the app's for. And clearly whatever the cadence that you have on repainting those is maybe too long. So let's look at that. Well, we have, it was like, we have a 2-year cycle. It's like, well, that cycle doesn't work. I'm so sorry. 38 need repainting. Like, let's look at that for the betterment of the community, of the students and the schools, right? So, even to the point where in the last year, probably now there's probably been about 60 repainted, which is super cool.
Awesome.
And the city has made, just a huge effort to making that happen.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
It sounds like you're at a lot of schools all the time.
We cover every elementary in Fresno Unified, so 67.
Wow. Yeah.
Whether we have a current crossing guard volunteering or not, we serve that school in other ways.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Hey friends, wanted to pause the episode and let you know about a training EMP is hosting here in Fresno on October 20th. It's called Love Your Neighbor, Understanding Poverty with Jesus' Eyes. It's really going to be an engaging workshop. We're going to talk about the complex causes of poverty, how Scripture calls us to respond, and whether this is a new conversation for you or something you've been involved for a long time. I think you're going to come away equipped and inspired to respond to the world in Jesus's way. So we're excited about it. Again, October 20th at the Garage Church, 6 to 8 p.m., $10 cost. You can look at our website or social media for more. Also, you can register at bit.ly, so bit.ly/ENP poverty. So that's all lowercase ENP poverty. Love to have you come. Love your neighbor, understanding poverty through Jesus' eyes on October 20th.
Ever wondered what makes your neighborhood unique or how the history of your city shapes the places you love today? Well, now you can explore the story of Fresno like never before, right from your car using the VoiceMap app. Introducing the Every Neighborhood Partnership Drive Tour, a self-guided audio tour that brings your community's history, landmarks, and stories to life. As you drive through local streets, EMP's Drive Tour will guide you with fascinating insights into the people, places, and events that have shaped your neighborhood. Whether you're discovering hidden gems, learning about community activism, or simply enjoying a fresh perspective on familiar places, this tour is a great way to connect with Fresno in a whole new way. So what are you waiting for? Tap into the Every Neighborhood Partnership Drive Tour today on VoiceMap and get to know your community like never before. Download the VoiceMap app, search for the Every Neighborhood Partnership Tour, and start exploring now. Fresno's story is waiting to be discovered. Yeah, so that leads me to my next question of if you're seeing across all 67 elementary schools, the differences in those neighborhoods, the different kinds of infrastructure that are in place in certain neighborhoods, what does a child's zip code, like their actual area that they live in, what determines their school experience and their safety? You talked a little bit about the principals being in charge of those safety measures, but what other things that as you observe and as you're, part of that community to some extent now as, implementing safety measures, what are some things that you're observing there that impact their safety just to get to school?
Yeah. So, our district, if you're not familiar with our district, it's about 100 square miles, over 100 schools, and 67 of those are elementaries. We have a couple K-8s. It's not as common. And then we have 7 high school regions. So, under each of those regions, if anyone was to drive north to south, not as much east to west, but north to south in our city, it's pretty clear on the differences just in the environment. The grass, the medians, the, trees, the green spaces, the proximity of the road traffic to the walking traffic, all those kind of things. And so I do feel like in the last couple years, on the whole, the city, as well as other organizations working together, are trying to bring some equity to that and are doing a good job of listening to the needs. And I think that's really, exciting. But I was, it's easy to go from, let's say, Tatarian Elementary, which is north of Herndon, on the freeway down to Kirk Elementary. That's easy. It's the fastest way, right? I'm going to go freeway. And so I started a number of years ago when I would go, because I would go sometimes to 10 schools in a day, right? And so, but I would purposely drive on the streets and not above what's happening to my next destination, because then you actually see what is happening in a city, right? Where are, maybe there's more homelessness and people that are unhoused and they're, on the sides of the sidewalk where children are trying to get to school, right? Where there maybe are not crosswalks, or we have some county islands, there's no sidewalks. So all of these things contribute to dangers for, and vulnerabilities for children as little as second grade. It's 8 years old, walking by themselves. I walked home a lot after school, starting in probably about 4th grade. And the news is on in my house. So I was always worried I was going to be kidnapped.
That was the 90s.
And I went to Robinson.
Yeah. 90s thing. Yeah.
And so, so it's whatever those things are, whether it's stray dogs who are literally chasing children, just trying to get to school. The trauma that can happen from leaving your home environment, which may or may not be traumatic in itself, to your school. We're trying to bridge that gap for those kiddos so they can actually get to school and learn. If they can't get to school safely, they can't learn. And if they get to school traumatized, we're going to have some difficulty learning, not to mention everything else they're dealing with, And so, the zip code thing is definitely, it's a real thing in our city. And there's a lot of things that have contributed to that historically. But I think with a number of organizations as well as the city are trying to make some of those things right.
Yeah.
So
I'm just curious, what have you seen them do to make it right?
A lot of traffic and engineering improvements, really purposeful in different parts of town. With community
So if you're
schools.
driving around town, you'll see now new dividers, they're slowing traffic.
Yeah.
Right now, even there's a conversation in Fresno. It's about to go down Blackstone.
Yep. The green striping for protected bike lanes, different parks that lead to different places, safer walking routes that are separated from traffic. Maybe they're higher, a lot of, even around a lot of the schools, they're called hawks. And it's it warns of the area. You push the button and it blinks when it's going to be pedestrian. So it's not a full stop light. So traffic can still move if there's not a pedestrian. But it also hopefully, if the person pushes the button, blink. Sometimes I drive by those and the person's standing there and they've not pushed it and they're like, wait, I want to like roll down my window and be like, push the button, like, do you see right there? So, so there's a lot of, I think a lot of things that.
I know we've been a part of even some work days with urban greening, right? You mentioned like if you just, they talk about in Fresno, like Southwest area, it really is like a green desert.
Yeah.
And so there's just not tree canopy. It's a heat island. Yeah. All these things of like just the lack of infrastructure and investment of like once a tree goes bad, it just doesn't get replanted. And then that creates a really hot, like kids walking, it's just really hot. Like there's no shade as they're walking to and from school. The little things that as you're in a car with an AC, you don't think of.
Right.
And then I think
or if you don't walk in that area, you have no reason to consider that. Right.
Right.
And all of those things to me really contribute to the social, emotional wellness of a community. Right. If it is ugly and dirty and trash and there's no trees, that has a really significant impact on the generations that continue to grow up in that area. And so, that's something we want to help be a part of changing.
Right. If you have the power to make a difference, but you actually don't walk where your constituents are walking or going the journey that they take to school, then how would you know?
Yeah. Which I think an important thing that like the city, the school district, even the county now are doing are walk audits, and they've hired an outside firm to help analyze the situations around the schools and to make plans on how to improve that, whether it's, safety, whether it's direct infrastructure, things like that. And so a walk audit is where you literally walk around the school, and we've done it with, groups, and we've done it down Blackstone, actually I did with you guys, where unless you are the one walking, you're like, oh my gosh, this is totally unsafe.
Like no one in a wheelchair could ever navigate this.
Or like one, when we were doing that one, is like the wheelchair person, there's no guard. Like if they got a little sideways, they're going to dump into down this thing.
Canal. Yeah.
You're like, okay, that's not great, but again, unless you walk that space and take those notes and have trained people who are like, well, this is what you could actually do here. This would, it's like, maybe we notice it. Well, we don't have that training, right? So you have to partner that with people who actually that's their skill.
Yes.
And I feel like the city, the school district, and the county are doing that.
There's a program, right? That's
Safe Routes to
School.
School.
Safe Routes to School. And then you may hear another term if you're looking for it called Vision Zero.
Vision Zero Network.
Yeah. So that's about really reducing any kind of fatality with cars and stuff.
Yeah.
Who have been surprising allies for you as you've like done this work? Like folks that you're like, I never would have worked with them or known about them or they've just been supportive of our work. Anybody come to mind?
I don't think so, because I just know a lot of people in Fresno and I don't mind asking. So it's not really, I don't know if it's a surprising, EMP, it's like, well, of course we're going to work together, right? We have we have relationships with you previous to our work. I mean, for me too, one of the things I try to do with our volunteers is, okay, we've trained them in the crosswalk, but now what other things can we bring them? What other safety related trainings can we bring to them so that they're not only prepared to be a crosswalk volunteer, right? But then the other trainings we bring are helpful in that setting, but also it's helpful on the weekends when they're with their family doing a barbecue or in the summer. And so we call it being guardians of your neighborhood. So we feel like if we can bring those other, EMP type trainings, we've done CPR, stop the bleed, water safety, human trafficking, if we can bring that other information to our crossing guards, which we have about 150 crossing guards each month right now, then that's a huge win, right? Not only are they more prepared in the crosswalk, but then they're just more prepared in their communities and they're an asset in their neighborhood, right? So it's bigger than just our one, one way to be involved.
Yes. The first time you and I chatted about Safe to School, that was what really stood out to me. I thought that's so cool that you've realized and are capitalizing on the fact that the people that are volunteering with you could also be the people that care the most about their neighborhood and how it operates. And then you also want to resource them with so many other things to make them I love that, guardians of your neighborhood. I would also even just say experts, like they can be the person that people can talk to if they want to know.
Well, and they've stepped up to be a crossing guard volunteer. That's a leadership position. To me, they're leading in their neighborhoods
saying, I care.
By saying, oh, it's not just my child I care that gets to school safely. Actually, it's the whole group. And that takes effort,
Yes.
right? They got to show up,
Takes a village.
be consistent,
Yes.
right? But they've already said by demonstrating with their actions, I'm a leader in my community.
Yes.
So I want to not only tell them that, because maybe they never heard that. Maybe they're like, well, of course I'm going to do that. I'm available and I'm going to do it and my kid goes here. It's like, no, actually you're a leader. And that's really important. And because you're here, it is safer. We've never had a child hit in a crosswalk when we've had a crossing guard on duty,
Wow. Yeah.
which is kind of a miracle these days. And we have had children hit in our community, and it's terrible and it should not happen, right? And so that's why we're trying to continue not only to add schools and add crossing guards, right, but also have it be something that's consistent for the kids.
As you've now worked with the district, you've got to know city staff, you've got to know district staff, right? Ins and outs, and you figured out the system at some level. What do you wish was on the minds of our school leadership as they made decisions? Like, what do you wish they've heard, saw? What do you wish people just even in our community would see and hear as we make decisions for our kids? Like, what do you think is not prioritized?
I mean, I think funding's always an issue. It will be till all of time, right? And then in the nonprofit world, it definitely is a reality. Andrew always say that I do way more than I'm contracted for, but also do the things that I feel like God's calling me to do when they come up, because children's actual lives are at stake.
Right.
It's not like, oh, we're in a, it's this non-crucial, thing that we're doing. And so tempering those ideas that I have, or those kind of like leadings that I have with actual, funding is always really challenging. And providing the maximum that we can with the budget that we've been given, and doing it to where people feel cared for, they feel seen, they feel loved. Like I went to one school, it's been rare. For some reason, just around, again, Fresno's very diverse, and the school regions are very different than each other from one to the next, which is really neat and also kind of complicated, right? So this one particular school, we haven't had crossing guards at very often for whatever reason. I don't know. So we didn't have any. But again, we go to every school, we provide gear or go to parent meetings, whatever, for every single elementary. And the office manager who's been there since it opened, it was like 30 years. She's like, thank you for loving our school. It was like, that is it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I want to hear.
cares,
I want her to feel that we care about their school. Even if we don't have an active person there, how can we help you and your kids? Because she cares about every one of those kids. And she cares about every staff member, right? It doesn't make sense for me to show up and do the crossing at her school. It makes sense for me to help them raise up volunteers in their community to care for that community. And that's our goal, right? And so I think even hearing, that we have still probably about 15 to 20 elementaries that don't consistently have crossing guards. When I started with my dad, we had 24 schools. Now we have almost 50. We've served over 50 last school year at some point. Well, to me, that's no good. Like, it's better, but it's not a complete number. That means 15 to 20 schools don't have crossing guards. That means those children every single day, twice a day, are vulnerable to people driving on with their phone, or a giant vehicle that the front bonnet, it's called.
Yeah.
You literally can't see
Over.
children crossing, like it's too big. And so
You're saying like the way cars are actually designed now make it hard to have visibility to
cars
see little
are much
kids.
larger than when we all went to school. So
I've seen
that's
some
a huge
designs,
issue.
yeah.
So
and those mistakes don't discriminate neighborhoods or zip codes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was last year that a child got hit up in Clovis. It's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, every community.
Yes.
Yeah. And
every
I think
community
it's interesting.
needs safety.
Every community's like,
by
oh
their
my gosh,
schools.
at our school. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's at every school. Just so you know. Parents fly the door open in the middle of the road and tell their tiny child to run across. That's not acceptable, right? So it's such a multi-layered issue. And so it's like, what are those things we can start to meet those needs and get the community involved in being more careful around schools, driving actually the speed limit around schools, not being on your phone when driving at all, which is really tempting for all of us, right? Like there's so many things. And so I think for community members to, even if you can't be a crossing guard, right? You can do some of those things, right? You can be a really good passenger,
Yes.
you can put on your seatbelt right? There's a lot of other things that people can do, but we always need safety gear. Safety gear is expensive, and for some reason, people like our vests and never return them, even if they're not a crossing guard anymore. So, it's like there'll always be needs outside of what the district is able to provide that I think are needs that keep the community safe. So.
Well, and I think where our hearts have been so aligned even from the get is that like what Safe to School is doing is inherently recognizing it takes a village. You said it takes a village, right? Like inherently that is the work, is like we need people to recognize it's not just about your kid, your home, your yard, your whatever. It's about us.
So self-focused.
And as that us grows, like that's, I think, what I continue to feel like more and more is what I want to see is people that just realize that us becomes bigger than just my family, my racial group, where I live, the city I live in. And I have to always do this myself, but like it's a bigger us, and us is going to change this community. It's not going to be blaming Fresno Unified. It's like get out there with the sign and be present to that kid.
About it. What time can you come and help? Yeah. My dad always would say, "Well, what time are you available? Can you be there at 7:15?"
And I love, even for folks like you don't know, when you see this coming fall, right? There's a work going on right now with Measure C. And this is just an example of how this issue gets really systemic, because Measure C was going to come onto the ballot, but it failed. Well, it got put on the ballot, but the ballot measure that got put on there actually cut Safe Routes to Schools money from previous Measure C money. And that's Measure C money is the tax we have in the Fresno County that builds roads and infrastructure projects. You see that sign that it's got the Measure C logo.
Brought to you by Measure C.
Yeah.
The little car.
And they actually were going to cut Safe Routes to School money. And that's one of the issues. EMP rarely takes political issues, but like, hey, we need to increase Safe Route to School money.
Not zero.
Not decrease it. Yes, we are not going backwards in this. And so our kids, like there are schools all throughout this region that still don't have sidewalks, still don't have these like every neighborhood should have those. It just should be part of what's around our kids. So I think that's like, those are the issues that even as a voter, you can vote for the kids, like vote with that in mind of how do we create safer access for our kids, right? And then hopefully some of that money comes to Safe to Schools,
Well, and with that, one of my first semester of taking classes at Baki for my master's, this verse was in something that we were reading, or I don't know, our teacher had us do. I'm just going to read it real quick. It's Romans 12:4-5. It says, "For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Christ, and individually members one of another." And that just hit me so hard that if Andrew, who lives on the other side of town, is hurting, that affects me. If Grace, something happens in her family, even if I don't know of it yet, that affects me, because our community is very transient. People are all over different parts of town in one day. So if you have something happen to you, right, and you're sad or mad or whatever, and you drive across town to some other store or whatever and interact with somebody else, well, you've just taken those emotions with you. So even though maybe I don't know that person, my interaction with them is going to be filtered through whatever they're processing, right? So, and that goes for the whole entire world. We don't realize how actually now, especially social media, interconnected we all are. And an example of this it's just, again, right after I had this with the class, I was pulling into around a giant bush, I was pulling into a parking spot. And a gal was coming from the back of the bush, from the sidewalk of the shops, through the parking stall, because no one was there yet. And I stopped, and she was startled, and she just told me what she was thinking, and it wasn't very kind. My windows were up. But instead of, because I'm kind of like a fight is my first natural instinct, but even from learning that, and what I had learned in my classes was compassion for her. It was like, oh my gosh, what has happened either in her life or this day that has caused that to be her reaction? Because I had a lot of trauma growing up, and I was like, I had walls up and I was ready to fight everyone. But I am thankful that the Lord has changed some of those first responses of mine to be compassion and to be understanding of people. Curiosity. And that translates into the school environment, right? Into the city's environment, into, infrastructure meetings, like all of those things. It's like, okay, how do we get here? And then how can we work together to make it really best for everybody, you know? And so I think so many people aren't in that space yet. And I've not like arrived, but as far as just getting to the point of compassion for other people and enough grace for other people to not have your like first visceral reaction and then be mad about it and then be like, forget you, I'm going to, you know, and really come at it, try to be a little bit more understanding, you know, of where people are coming from.
I'm even thinking about the people that volunteer for you as crossing guards. And today, specifically, like, you know, in our individual culture, I think it could be, if someone were to ask, like, could you volunteer? I think the perspective could be like, well, you're taking from my time, right? It's like that scarcity mindset. But I'm sure you have story after story of volunteer that said yes and how much it's added to their life.
Right. Yeah.
And we don't even realize, like, when we say yes to those things that feel like an inconvenience or feel unrealistic, or how am I going to do this? And then you say yes to it, and now they're connected to, and they get to say hi to every kid that walks in, how much fuller your life can become. And then it goes back to the verse that you read, like, you are now participating and operating and giving out to the community and being part of the body, as opposed to like, well, I don't have enough to give, or that's too much, or that. Yeah.
And the truth is, we all need each other. We all need each other to show up with the gifts that we have. Because if half of us only show up with our gifts, we're at a deficit, right? So we try to say too with our volunteers is like, we want to help you figure out what some of those are, right? So that you can bring that. We need you to bring your gifts and talents to this space, and that's going to make it better for everybody, right? And who doesn't want better?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, you know, definitely in those things of like getting outside of like just your kid, just your schedule, which people have very crazy, busy, full lives. And I think one thing that's actually, I feel like a little bit, I think it's good for children as far as choice goes, and like the pathways for high schools now and all that stuff. When we all grew up, right, it was like you went to the elementary, middle, and high school that were in your neighborhood. It was like, why would you do anything else? That was what everybody did. Well, now, I mean, families have kids at multiple areas of town.
Right.
Trying to meet the children's needs leaves the parents a little frantic.
Yeah.
And like, well, I can't really help because I'm literally driving it for an hour, dropping off 3 kids at 3 locations. Then later, I'm going to go and pick all those kids up at 3 locations, you know? And so I think, again, everything kind of has a, you know, beauty and a curse, is like, that's so great. And I think kids hopefully are benefiting from that choice. But I think almost sometimes you lose that neighborhood.
Disconnected us from place.
Exactly.
Too. Yeah.
It's disconnected us a little bit from like, oh, this is my neighborhood. This is my.
We literally had a conversation this weekend where it was like, can't we all, we have a really rich community that lives around us, and it's like, can't we all just agree on one school to send our kids?
Let's all do it together.
That is impossible now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyways. Well, Erin, I thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It's been fun to watch your leadership grow and just your like intuitiveness. I love just watching you. Like, it's not a social butterfly because you're like dogged in that you're going to get something, but you're just not afraid to talk to anybody about anything, and you're doing it. And you know, I as a executive director, I'm giving you that like feedback of you could get more money out of this, but for the heart, and that's what our hearts are aligned on. You're doing it for the kids, not just for money. And I think like that is ultimate what I see for Safe to School. So may the Lord continue to bless you as you lead. May volunteers increase. If folks, obviously folks can go to your website, volunteer, and you learn about their local school. Are there other ways folks can contribute outside of volunteering, following you on social media? What else would you say?
Yeah, we have our website, safe2schoolinc.org, and then that's also our Instagram. Hoping to get a little newsletter going.
Yeah.
But yeah, contributing if you're like, I want to, on there's an option to like buy a safety kit.
Yeah.
And contribute in that way, which is a safety vest and a stop sign and, things like that. We do rain gear and, just stuff that's tangible, that's needed.
That folks need.
And we go through kind of a lot of it. So, And I just honestly like go day by day where the Lord leads me. And those are the conversations. So being confident in what that is And I mean, anywhere from like, I think I'm going to go over here for lunch. And I'm like, no, over there. And I go over there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to call that person.
Yeah.
Or there's this person that I should talk to. Or, that happens all the time. And then it just doesn't feel like hard work because I really feel like my path is set, day by day, and just keep walking the next step and getting the next thing that I, feel like we should be doing. So
cool. So good. Thank you so much for
coming thank you guys for having me. I was so excited.
Yeah, so good.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to find out more about EMP, you can visit us at everyneighborhood.org or follow us at EMP Fresno. Every Neighborhood Partnership and this podcast exists to activate, equip, mobilize, and transform here in Fresno and beyond. If you liked what you've heard, please share and review what's good in the neighborhood wherever you listen. We'll see you next time.